Good morning, all. So today is the second day of this faculty development program. So yesterday we had some sessions. I hope you have some understanding on what is blockchain, what are the techniques, how the blockchain is working, and what are the techniques we should know to develop a blockchain, and what is mining, what are the various steps involved in mining, and what are the various protocols in consensus mechanisms. So all those things we discussed in yesterday's session. And so cryptography is the heart of the blockchain. So today we have a session, and here we have Dr. Subramani to present this session. He is going to take the mathematical background of cryptographic technology. So now I request Deva Ganesh to introduce the speaker. So welcome Subramani sir for this session.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good morning to all the participants for the second day academy program on blockchain and its application. We are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. With this positive note, we will start today's session on cryptocurrency and blockchain algorithms by Dr. M. Subramaniam sir. Dr. M. Subramaniam sir has received his PhD degree from He has received PhD degree from Chennai Mathematical Institute, and also he completed his postdoctoral fellow from Harish Chandra Research Institute. He has completed his Master of Philosophy from Pondicherry University and also Master of Science from Madras Christian College. He has been working as an assistant professor in the Department of Mathematics at IIITDM Kanchipuram since 2019. Number theory, mathematical cryptography, or the important research interest. And he has given some recent talks, which includes Euclidean quadratic number fields and foundations of cryptography, as well as simultaneous divisibility of class numbers. These are some of the important uh, talks given by him and recently. So now I invite Dr. M. Subramaniam sir to hand over the session. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
Sir, before starting the session, can everyone switch on the video? Just we can take one photograph for this session. All participants, please switch on your video for a moment, please. Thank you all. Yes, sir, you can continue, sir.
Thank you for the organizers for this opportunity, especially Kalpana ma'am. And one second, ma'am. It is not sharing. So I'm sharing. So today today we will try to understand the mathematical background of cryptography, especially as we know for blockchain algorithms, the digital signature plays an important role. And among the many digital signatures, and RSA digital signature and elliptic curve digital signature are more prominent one. Even elliptic curve digital signature is the widely used algorithm in blockchain. So today I will start with the introduction to cryptography. So my aim is not the implement part of the cryptography. So my aim is to introduce the mathematical part of the cryptography, theoretical aspect, not the computational aspect. Okay, so I start with the definition. So what is a cryptography? So I hope my notes are clear to everyone, and apologies if it is not clear. So what is a cryptography? And cryptography is a study of is a science to send message in disguised form. So we supposed to send a message, and only the intended recipient we want them to read, not the other third party, not the attacker. So we want to send the science of sending information of this form is called cryptography. So we'll fix some notations. So some notions. So what is the plain text? The message we want to send is called a plain text. And what is a ciphertext? The message we converted or the message we can the disguised form is called a ciphertext. And encryption. So the process of converting a plain text into a ciphertext is called encryption. And the process of decryption. The decryption is the process of converting a ciphertext into a plain text. Let's see a very simple crypto system called shift cipher or Caesar cipher. Suppose we want to send a message. Enemy falling back. A simple message, enemy falling back. So it is not, I mean, obviously we don't want to send them as it is. So enemy falling back. So we don't want them to send in this form. So what we do, so in Caesar cipher, we make a small trick. Suppose assume that we are arranging English alphabets from left to right, A, B, C, D, up to Z. And then I'm considering each letter separately from the plain text, like E, N, E, M, Y. I consider each letter separately, and then I said, instead of sending E, shift E 5 units to the right. So if I remember A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, instead of sending E, I'm shifting E to 5 units. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm replacing E by J. And similarly, I replace N by the letter to the right of 5 units. So I replace N by S. So you can see that S appears 5 places after N. And similarly, we replace E by J and M by R. And the same process applies to each alphabet here by shifting each alphabet to the right of 5 places. And I get a new set of alphabets: J, S, J, R, D, K, F, Q, Q, N, S, L, G, F, H, P. And we will send this one. We will send this one as a message to our receiver. And as we can see, is not as trivial as sending enemy falling back. So this is not, it is not trivially readable. So it is in a disguised form. So once the receiver receives this message, and if he knows that we are using Caesar cipher to encrypt our message, what he or she will do, so after receiving the ciphertext, they shift each letter in the ciphertext to the left of 5 places. So if I replace J to J by a letter which is 5 places to the left of J, we can get E. As you can see, no, if I have J, E appears 5 places to the left of J. And similarly, S by N appears 5 places to the left of N, yes, and similarly each ciphertext. So once the receiver make the ciphering and decrypting, then they get the plain text was what we intended to send them. So enemy falling back. So this is a most simple encryption algorithm to encrypt a plain text. But it is almost readable. I'm not almost, I mean, it is trivially readable, I can say, because I mean, in this algorithm, you can see, no, so there are only 25 ways of shifting your plain text. You can shift 1 place, or you can shift 2 places, or you can shift 3 places, up to, because there are only 26 English alphabets, so you can shift only 26 places. So there are only 26 options you have, that we call it as a private key. So the key is how many shifts you make. That number is called a private key. There are only 26 ways of encrypting your message, and a simple algorithm, or by by simple Haddock method will encrypt our message. Anyone can read this message. So this one is not suitable for us. This one is not suitable for any application purpose, because we want the attacker, we want to be secure enough to send the message. Okay, so what is the mathematics behind that? So how do we send this message? So before going to the cryptographic protocols, we will recall some a number system called which is which is the fundamental in any cryptographic protocol. We will understand this modular arithmetic before proceeding to other cryptographic protocols. Okay, so let's have a integer m. Let's fix an integer m, any integer m, and we say that two integers a and b are same or congruent if congruent modulo m if the difference is divisible by m. So let's, for example, if I take m is equal to 10, my a1, my 1 and 11, they are congruent because the difference is 10, which is divisible by 10. So any two numbers, if their difference are divisible by 10, we say that these two numbers are congruent. For example, here I have 6 and 9. So the difference is 3. So 3 is not divisible by 10. Therefore, 6 and 9 are not congruent. And similarly, if I take 2 and minus 3, I said any integer, so minus 3. So let's take 2 and minus 3. Let's take the difference between 2 and minus 3, which is minus 5 or plus 5, whatever. It depends on how we write 2 minus 3 or minus 3. So a minus b, 2 minus 3, which is 5. So 5 is not divisible by 10. Therefore, these 2 and minus 3 are not congruent to modulo 10. So what we do actually, we sort of defining a equality in a different way. So that's why we use 3 letters. So one word extra. So we say congruent instead of equality. So yeah. And then now, once we fix an integer m, which can be any integer, I define a set z over m is z. So this is simple. So this set collects all numbers from 0 to m minus 1. For example, if I take m is equal to 10, my set z over 10 is collection of integers from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 9. If I take m equal to 58, then my z over 58 z is all the numbers from 0 to 57. Okay, so what is special about this particular set? What is special about this particular set? It enjoys all the properties of the natural numbers z we study from our childhood. So what is the integers? Sorry, not natural numbers, integers. So what is that? Integers. So all the numbers from 0 to 0, 1, 2, 3 up to infinity, and then I have minus 1, minus 2. This is our integers, set of all integers. But you can see now this set is an infinite set. This set is an infinite set. But this set, once you fix an integer m, this set is a finite set. But even though it is a finite set, it enjoys all the algebraic properties what this set enjoys. Okay, so I will just list few of them, which will crucial for us to understand our cryptography. Okay, so once you fix this set, once you fix z over m is z, which is 0, 1, 2 up to m minus 1. If you have two elements from this set, any two integers from this set, we can add. We can add two elements. So how do we add? To perform the addition a and b, you add as usual a and b, and then you divide the addition by m, and you take the remainder. So that is the remainder is the addition of a and b. So for example, once you take m is equal to 12, I have a is equal to 6 and b equal to 9. I want to add a and b. So what I do, I first add a and b, which is 6 plus 9, which is 15. So but in our new system, z over m is z, a plus b is not 15. So my a plus b is, after you getting the result, you divide that number by your integer m, which is 12 here. So divide 15 by 12, the remainder is 3. So so a plus b is 3 here. So I'm defining addition in this way. So my addition is follows here. For example, if I take a equal to 12 and b equal to -3, so what is a plus b in our set, in our new system? So to do that, first add a plus b, so which is 2 plus -3, which is -1, and you divide -1 by 12. So I can see that no, we can say -1 as well, but you can see that no, 11 it can be a remainder if you divide by -1, or you can think of like the integer 11 is congruent to -1. So I'm doing addition in this way in our set z over m z, and multiplication. So also we can do multiplication. How do we do the multiplication? The same way, if you want to multiply two integers a and b, two given integers a and b from your set, you first multiply them as usual and divide the result by the integer m, and then take the remainder. So that remainder is the multiplication of a and b. So as I said earlier, the set z, in our set z, we can add any two integers when we can multiply any two integers. The same thing we can do it here as well. So in this set, for any two integers, we can add them as well as we can multiply them. Okay. So this is an example for m equal to 5. When you take m equal to 5, my z over 5z is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, as I said, we can add any two integers in this set. So if you list them, if you list the elements in z over m z by, here we can see that no, this table gives addition. So this gives addition of 1 and 1, and this gives addition of 1 plus 3, and this gives addition of 3 and 2. So this table will contains addition of every two elements, any two pair of elements in z over 5. This is a model arithmetic we usually study. And for the same set z over 5z, we can define multiplication table. The multiplication table is as follows. So this is our z over 5z, and so this table gives multiplication of any two elements in z over 5z. For example, so when you take 4 and 3, we want to multiply 4 and 3. 4 and 3, you multiply 4 and 3 first, we get 12, and then divide 12 by 5, we get the remainder 2. So that is a multiplication of 3 and 4. Okay. So now what we did, so we have a finite set, a finite collection of sets for any integer m. So once you fix an integer m, you have the finite set, and in the finite set you can multiply any two elements and you can add any two elements. Okay. The last purely mathematical part in this lecture is a Euclidean algorithm. So this is crucial in attacking any cryptography, especially especially RSA and elliptic curve cryptography. Okay, so we will explain what is RSA and elliptic curve. So what is the Euclidean algorithm by step? So what is the Euclidean algorithm? So when you have any two integers, you know that we can divide any non-zero integer by an integer. So we can divide any integer by a non-zero integer. So that's what we do. Suppose we have two integers a and b, and we divide a by b, so we get the quotient and the remainder. And then we choose the divider and the remainder, and the next step we divide the divider by the remainder. So we divide b by r2, So we get a quotient and the remainder. So once we get the second step, we have the divider R2. So now we divide the divider R2 by the remainder R3. So we divide R2 by R3. So we get the quotient RQ3 and remainder R4. And then we continue in this process. So until you get a zero remainder. Until you get a zero remainder. So once you get a zero remainder, so you choose the last one, which is non-zero RT. So that last non-zero remainder is the GCD of En. Is a GCD of En. So why do we need this complicated algorithm to find a GCD of any two given integers? Because this algorithm, what we have just seen, is a polynomial time algorithm. So we always look for a algorithm which is polynomial. So this is a polynomial time algorithm to find the GCD of any two given integers, N. And I mean, so why RT is a GCD of A and B? I mean, we can see this equation and we can conclude that. Okay, let me little bit explain why RT is an GCD of A and B. So see, so we can see that once if we have A and B, so from the last equation, RT divides RT minus 1. So once you have a zero remainder, you have RT. So RT divides RT minus 1. And because RT divides RT minus 1, we have RT and RT minus 1 here. Therefore, my RT divides RT minus 2 as well. Because RT divides RT and RT divides RT minus 1. Therefore, RT divides RT minus 2. And similarly, you can go back. You can trace the equation from backside. You can see that RT divides two integers A and B. And in fact, it is a minimal integer which divides A. So that is a mathematical part. And if we are not comfortable with that, we don't need to remember. So what we supposed to remember is, excuse me. So what we supposed to remember is the algorithm which will give the GCD of any two integers. So for any two larger integers A and B, this algorithm will give GCD. Okay. So this is an example. I'm giving an example. I'm taking A is equal to 2024 and B is 748. And I first divide A by B. I get the remainder 528 and the quotient 2. Now I divide from the first equation, I divide the divider 748 by the remainder 528. So once I get the second equation, from the second equation, I divide the divider by the quotient remainder. That means divide 528 by 220 and continue in this way. So we can see that, so 44 is the last non-zero remainder. So the equivalent algorithm says that once you reach the last non-zero remainder, so that number is the GCD of En. So here 44 is the GCD of En. Okay. So what is the application of Euclidean algorithm? So what is the application of Euclidean algorithm? So I first introduce some extra last definition in this lecture. So before we will move to cryptography. So once you fix an integer m, I have z over mz, as we know what is z over mz. Now I defined another set z over mz star. So what is z over mz star? Is all integers from 1 to n. All integers from 1 to m minus 1 and GCD of A and M are 1. So initially my z over mz star, initially my z over mz is all integers from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to m minus 1. But my new set z over mz star is not all the integers from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to m minus 1, but integers from 1 to m minus 1 which are co-prime to m. That means the GCD between A and M should be 1. So I collect that particular set. So So I have just introduced, we have seen only 2 sets so far, which is crucial for us to understand our lecture, which is Z over MEZ and Z over MEZ star. Okay. So I will revisit again. So we will revisit again when it is required, when you go to these sets, Z over MEZ and Z over MEZ star. Okay. So with this quick introduction to modular arithmetic, let's go back to our Caesar cipher. So let's understand Caesar cipher in this way. So instead of saying no, remember, so what is the Caesar cipher? We replace each alphabet. We replace each alphabet by another alphabet by shifting. So instead of understanding in this way, what we do, we label each alphabet by an integer. So instead of considering A, B, C, D, I'm labeling each integer in this way, from 0, 1, 2, 3, up 4, 5, and so on. That means I label A by 0, B by 1, C by 2, D by 3, E by 4, and so on. So this is the label I do here. I replace each alphabet by an integer. And then remember our plain text. What we're supposed to send? Enemy falling back. Enemy falling back. So first what I do, I replace each integer, each alphabet by corresponding integers. I labeled, no? So we label each alphabet by the integer. So I replace each alphabet by the integer corresponding to that. I replace E by 4. I replace N by 13. I replace E by 4 again, M by 12, and so on. So I replace each plain text by the integer. Now my plain text is the following. Now I consider the integer sequence 4, 13, 4, 12, 24, 5, 0, 11, 11, 8, and so on. So that is our plain text. So once I have the plain text, what I do, I add each integer in the plain text by 5 modulo 26. I consider Z over 26Z, which is 0, 1, 2 up to 25. Remember that. And because of our labeling, we can identify each integer A by 0 by A, 1 by B, 2 by C, and so on. So the same shifting what we did in the Caesar cipher is equivalent to adding each plain text alphabet by 5 modulo 26. 5 means shifting. Remember, we shifted 5 units, 5 places. Here we do exactly the same thing. We add each plain text by 5, but modulo 26 in this set. So if I do that, so I have 4, I add 4 with 9. So 4 with 5, we have 9. And then 13 with 13 plus 5, 18. 4 plus 9, 9. So remember, 25 plus 5 is 29, but modulo 26, which is 3. So I do the same addition modulo 26, 5 modulo 26. And then I have a cipher text. Once you do the addition modulo 26, I get the cipher text 9, 18, 9, 17, 3, 10, and so on. And then in the algorithm, what I do, I replace each number by the corresponding alphabet. J, S, J, R. So 9 corresponds to J. Remember, 9 corresponds to J. And then 18 corresponds to S, and so on. I replace each integer by the corresponding alphabet. Now I have the plain text. Now I have the plain text. Sorry, cipher text. Once you replace each integer by corresponding alphabet. So you can see the same. So these plain text and cipher text. So remember, so this cipher text JSJR, DKFQQN is same as the same cipher text we received in the beginning. it should be, because we are doing exactly the same thing, but the only difference is we converting each plain text by a corresponding integer, and then we do the arithmetic, modular arithmetic. So what is the advantage of doing this? Even though they are same, what is the advantage of doing this? We don't need to do the bookkeeping anymore. We don't need to have a table, the corresponding table. So we just need to do the modular arithmetic, the addition modulo 26, that will do our job. Then again, I mean, as we saw earlier, this cipher is, this way of ciphering is almost trivial. So because there are only integers from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 25, we can add only integers from 0 to 25, and so only 26 options we have, and any program or any simple program will crack this Caesar cipher easily. We don't need program as well. So we just simply need few minutes to crack. Okay, so let's start with Caesar cipher. Let's define, let's formally define what is a Caesar cipher. Okay, so from the previous example, we have seen that we can identify our plain text as integers from plain text units, the alphabets, as integers from 0 to 25, and ciphertext C as integers from 0 to 25, and then the encryption function is a function from P to C, which can be defined as f of P is equal to P plus 5 modulo 26, and similarly, and for the decryption function, which is f inverse, which is C minus 5 modulo 26. Same thing. So I'm writing more mathematically. What we have seen is all the three are same. I'm writing more mathematics. So as we have seen earlier, so this is almost trivial. So let's look for a little bit difficult crypto system. Okay, let's make. So let's consider the affine crypto system, which is relatively stronger than Caesar cipher. Okay, suppose our plain text is, am I clear to everyone? My face is fine. Am I make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we have a setup. So what is the basic idea in crypto system? I mean, in mathematical cryptography is identifying each alphabet unit we supposed to send by a mathematical object. So the most basic mathematical object we know is integers. So that's what we have been doing. So converting each alphabet by a mathematical object, which is by integers. Okay. So there is, remember, so there are 26 alphabets, English alphabets. There is no need to have only 26 alphabets. You can include punctuation, and you can use other alphabets also for your crypto system. So therefore, it can have any number of integers. Let's say capital N number of positive integers. Suppose your plain text contains integers from 0 to n minus 1. We can think of our plain text units or integers from 0 to n minus 1, and similarly my ciphertext are integers from 0 to n minus 1. And once I have fixed integer capital N, what I do, I take an integer A, which is z over nez star. Remember, z over nez star. I take an integer A in z over nez star, and I take an integer B in z over nez. So B in z over nez and A in z over nez star, and I define a function f of P is equal to AP plus B modulo N. So this is our crypto system. This is our crypto system, new crypto system. So once I have a unit here, a plain text unit here, suppose my P is 2, so my f of 2 is A2 plus B modulo N. So that is my ciphertext integer. So unlike the Caesar cipher, remember my Caesar cipher is simply P plus 5. The inverse function for P plus 5 is P minus 5. But here it is not P plus 5, which is AP plus B. So which is, there is a floating around P. So for how to find the inverse of this function, f of p is equal to ap plus b modulo n. Again, it is not difficult. So the inverse for this function ap plus b is the following. So when the f inverse of c is a inverse c plus minus a inverse into b. So which is the inverse for f. So we can ask the question, so how do we know that this function is the inverse for f? How do we know that this is exactly the inverse for f? And these notions, a inverse and these things, I mean, so this is an application of Euclidean algorithm. But for time being, so we try to see that, so these functions are in fact given to systems. So you can fix any integer n, let's say 241 and n is equal to 241, and you can take all integers all the way from 0 to 240 is our plain text unit, and all the text integers from 0 to 240 is your ciphertext unit, and I take a is equal to 7, which is co-prime to 241, and my b is 10. So with this choice a equal to 7 and b equal to 10, my function f of p is 7p plus 10 will give a crypto system. So once you make a choice a and b, you can define a crypto system. But unfortunately, this is also trackable without any effort. So the inverse function, so anyone has the ciphertext can easily find the plain text as well. So affine crypto system is also not useful for us any longer. Okay. So okay, let's go for let's make our problem difficult. So remember, in both the Caesar cipher and affine crypto system, there is only, I mean, especially in the Caesar cipher, we are shifting. The shift is made by one integer, right? 5. So the shift is made by one integer, and also we take each unit in the plain text and then converting each plain text unit into a ciphertext unit. So yeah, so here in the Wigner cipher, we are not considering each alphabets separately. We consider a pair of that, or we make a group of plain text units and then try to encrypt each unit as each group as a unit. Okay, so this is the following. So in this method, so what we do, we are not considering, we consider each plain text element. Each plain text element as alphabets, m alphabets. We consider first m integers, and then next m integers, and then next m integers, and so on. And then we encrypt each block of m integers separately. Okay, let me explain with an example so that it will be clear. So let's fix an integer m. You want to block. So remember, in Caesar cipher we have one block. We convert one block mean we converted each plain text unit separately. Each plain text unit separately. Now here in this cipher we can make our choice. We can make our choice. How? Suppose I consider 6. Once I consider 6, then I look for my crypto system. So what is I look for my plain text. The plain text I want to send is, this crypto system is not secure. So that the message I want to send it to my receiver. So instead of considering these plain text units as a single units, what I do, once I fix an integer, I consider 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. First 6 integers, first 6 alphabets, and then next 6 alphabets, and then next 6 alphabets, and then next 6 alphabets, and so on. I'm considering a block. Instead of considering each unit, I'm considering a block of units, block of alphabets. So once I consider blocks, so I see, so the first block I have 6 integers, and the second block I have 6 integers. Now what I do, I consider the first block. So the first block, THISCR. So as we did for Caesar cipher, I convert each alphabets in the block by a corresponding integers. Remember, a T corresponds to 19, H corresponds to 7, A corresponds to, I corresponds to 8, S corresponds to 18, C corresponds to 2, R corresponds to 17. Now, what I do, I consider each block. first block separately. I consider first block, and now my key is a sequence of 6 alphabets. So the CC cipher, there is only one alphabet, 5. But here I have 6 alphabets as of my key. So what I do, I convert the first integer 19 by adding 2. I add 19 by 2, and then I add the second number by 8, and then I add third number 8 by 15. Then I add fourth number 18 by 7. Then I add fifth number 2 by 4, and then I add sixth number 17 by 17 modulo 26. All these additions modulo 26. And then once I do the encryption for the first block, this is my encryption for the first block. Then I go to the next block. My next block is YPTOSY. I consider the next block. And then I can encrypt the second block. And then I go to the third block. I can encrypt the third block, and so on. So what is the advantage of this Vignesh cipher is that we have this key, this possible keys becomes larger. Or possible keys are larger. Suppose I in this key, you remember Caesar cipher, there is only one block. I converting each block, each unit, each alphabet as a block, and then I'm enciphering each unit. But here I'm grouping the first 6 integers and the next 6 integers and so on. And then so for my key is a sequence of 6 integers. So how many possible keys are possible here with 6? So if I allow my key to have 6 integers, sequence of 6 integers, I can see that the number of possible keys k is 26 to the power 6. So in the CC cipher, I only have 26 options. I have only 26 options. But here, by simply a little bit of tricking, we'll have possible options will be 26 to the power 6. So it's a huge number, right? So 26 to the power 6 is a huge number. So suppose if someone wants to attack our message, he has to check all the 26 to the power 6 possible keys. So there is no special about grouping your alphabets by 6. You can group your alphabets by 10. You can group your alphabets by 10, first 10 alphabets, and the next 10 alphabets, and the next 10 alphabets. And for the key, you should have a sequence of 10 integers. Once you do that, then the possible keys, the number of possible keys is 26 to the power 10. That's again a big number compared to 26 to the power 6. Therefore, you can increase your blocks and encrypt your message. And it is difficult for the opponent to encrypt your message. But unfortunately, even this type of crypto system can be easily trackable. So once you know the number of blocks they use, you can easily, or simple frequency analysis of alphabets in English literature will easily solve this problem. Even though it looks difficult initially, because it increases the key size. The key size is big, so we need to have more key sizes, because then the opponent need to spend more time to check all the keys. But unfortunately, a simple analysis test will easily solve this problem. Okay. So the Vignesh cipher can be mathematically written in this form. So there is no need for you. So the plain text can be considered as an ordered sequence of m integers, and ciphertext can be considered as an ordered sequence of m integers, and your key is any sequence of m integers, and then the ciphertext is you replace first integer by adding k1, second integer x2 by adding k2, and third integer x3 by adding k3, and so on. So This is exactly what I did here. There is no, this is not new. So once you fix an integer m, you group your alphabets, and then you have a key with m number of integers, and then convert each blocks separately, one by one. So that's the idea in weakness cipher. Okay, so as I said earlier, so the underlying philosophy is converting each alphabet or each blocks of alphabets by an mathematical object. So undoubtedly the integers are the most fundamental mathematical objects, but we know many other mathematical objects as well. So the non-trivial is the matrices. So now we try to convert each plain text into a matrices. So now one side we have many mathematical objects. So whenever you find a way of identifying your plain text by a mathematical object, you come up with a new crypto system. You come up with a new crypto system. Okay. So now we go to the matrices. So we try to convert each plain text by a matrices. So what we do here is the following. Suppose we want to send the plain text no answer is our plain text we supposed to send to our receiver. So what I do, I want to convert my plain text into a row column matrix, 2x1 column matrix. 2x1 column matrix. So what I do to make our plain text into a collection of 2x1 column matrix, I divide the plain text into blocks of 2 units. First 2 units no, and then next one an, and then sw, and then er. So I first divide each plain text into blocks of 2 alphabets, and then I consider the integers corresponds to alphabets. For example, no. So n corresponds to 13, o corresponds to 14. Therefore, I identify my block no by the matrix 13, 14, the column matrix 13, 14. And I go to the next alphabet, next block an, and I consider the corresponding integers to the alphabets. A corresponds to 0, n corresponds to 13. Therefore, the block an corresponds to the matrix 0, 13. And similarly, SW corresponds to 18, 22, and ER corresponds to 4 and 17. So once the identification is done, so I identified my plain text by a matrices, by 2x1 column matrices. So now I need to do the encryption. So how do we do the encryption? So here, for example, I choose a matrix 2378. 2378. So remember, I write my plain text as follows. So this is my first block, and this is my second block, and this is my third block, and this is my fourth block. So I'm sequentially writing my plain text. So once I have, this is my collection of all plain text. This one is our plain text. So to encrypt, what I do, I choose a matrix 2378, and then I multiply this A with our plain text matrix. So I'm first multiplying. So I'm multiplying this with this. I get 68. So 2 into 13 plus 3 into 14 plus we get 68, and then 7 into 78 into 30. So I get 203. Similarly, I do this for this column. I do this for this column. So I get corresponding columns. And remember, we are all working on modulus 26, the arithmetic modulo 26. So therefore, I replace each integer by the remainder when you divide by 26. So when you divide 68 by 26, I get the remainder 16. Therefore, I replace 68 by 16. So when you divide 39 by 26, I get the remainder 13, and so on. So now, this is my plain text. It's a ciphertext. So this is my plain text, and after multiplying with A, I have this is my ciphertext. So my receiver only received this 16, 21, 13, 0, 24, 16, 7, 8. Once he receives that, so his job is to his job is to, I mean, sorry. So we are not sending this as it is. So what we do, we replace each number 16 by the corresponding alphabet. 16 corresponds to Q, 21 corresponds to V, 13 corresponds to N, 0 corresponds to A, 24 corresponds to Y as it is. So this is my ciphertext. So we send this to our receiver, QVNAYQHI. So once our receiver receives the ciphertext, so he or she knows that we are using this matrix encrypting matrix system to encrypt our message. Once they receive this ciphertext, what they do, first step, they form a matrix. They replace each block by a column matrix. They consider blocks, and then they convert into matrices. And also, because we used our matrix A to encrypt our message, and we should assume that our receiver also should know what matrix we used. So the key should know to the receiver as well. So like the Caesar cipher, if there is, we should inform our receiver we use 5 to shift our plain text, so that he can use -5 to decrypt our message. So like that, we should know him that we use the matrix A to encrypt our message. So once he knows that we use the matrix A to encrypt our message, he or she simply computes A inverse, the inverse of the matrix, and then multiply A inverse with our ciphertext. A inverse of our ciphertext. So when you multiply A inverse with our ciphertext, we get a matrix which is precisely the plain text matrix what we compute. 13, 14, 0, 13, 8, 12, 4, 17, which is precisely the plain text matrix. So we get, so once he multiply A inverse with our ciphertext matrix, and then replace each alphabet by each integer by corresponding alphabets, so we get the plain text, no answer. But this looks so satisfying. I mean, somewhat difficult comparatively with our shift ciphers. Okay, there is a question mark. So what type of matrices we should choose? So can we choose all matrices to encrypt our message? No. So not all matrices we can use for a encrypting message. So if the determinant, suppose you use alphabets of 26, suppose you use alphabets from 0 to 26, 25, 26 letter of alphabets, you should choose a matrix A, so that the determinant, if you find the determinant should be co-prime to your integer 26. So the determinant of A and 26, they should be, the GCD of determinant of A and 26 should be 1. So why do we need that? Why do we need the determinant of A and 26 should be 1? Because we also want to have A inverse. So unless you have the determinant A and 26, they are co-prime, you don't have A inverse. There is no inverse function to that. Once you encrypt, you should also decrypt that. So once you have a function, you can think of in this way. Once you have a function which converts your plain text into a ciphertext, there should also be an inverse function. So inverse function decrypt your ciphertext into plain text. So here the encryption is multiplying by matrix A with your plain text matrix. So the inverse function is A inverse. We should multiply by A inverse to find the inverse function. So you should have A inverse. So in order to find A inverse, you should have determinant of A and 26 should be 1. So here in this example, let's see what is determinant of A. Determinant of A is 16 minus 21, which is minus 5. So you can see that minus 5 and 26, they are co-prime. That's why A inverse exists. We can find A inverse. So otherwise we cannot find A inverse. Okay. So in these encrypting matrices, what we did, once you have a plain text, we have divided the plain text into blocks, 2 blocks, NOA, NESWER, and then each block of 2 letters is converted into a 2 cross 1 matrix, a matrix of order 2 cross 1. And we can think of like, why do we need to have 2 cross 1 matrix? We can have 3 cross 1 matrix as well. So what do we do for that? We convert each plain text into a blocks of 3 letters. Here, so instead of NOA, NSW, and ER, and some dummy empty, or you can see or Z, or space, empty space. So now, if you convert NOA by corresponding integers, you have a 3 cross 1 matrix. So once you have a 3 cross 1 matrix, your matrix A should be 3 cross 3 matrix. So remember, so our opponent, once he finds the matrix A, he can solve our problem. So if suppose your matrix A is only a 2 cross 2 matrix, then it is relatively easy. So why is it relatively easy? Because if you have a 2 cross 2 matrices, if you only consider 2 cross 2 matrices, there are only 26 minus 1, 26 square minus 26 possible keys are there if you choose only 2 cross 2 matrix. So this number is relatively small with the modern computation power. So therefore, it forces us to choose higher order matrices. So that is very simple from this observation. So you just need to increase the block size. Once you increase the block size, for example, if you increase the block size by 3, you have a 3 cross 1 matrices, column matrices. So therefore, your encryption key is a 3 cross 3 matrix, any invertible matrix of order 3 cross 3. Or you can go further. You can choose a blocks of a size 10. Therefore, your encrypting objects are 10 cross 1 column matrices. They are 10, so the column matrices are huge. So anyone with we know our linear algebra knowledge that once you increase our matrix size, finding a inverse is becoming difficult and difficult. Relatively. I always use the word relatively because with the computation power, many aspects are not secure. So, but this will gives a hope. Once you increase the block size, you will increase the matrix size as well. Okay. So that's what we do. So that's what we do here. So you don't. So once you increase your block, you have a. So you have a. Once you have m blocks, once you choose have m blocks, then you have a m cross m invertible matrix as your private key. So that will increase our reliability. Okay, so that's for the. So whatever we have seen the crypto system so far is that we need a private key to encrypt our message, and we need we need a encrypting key to encrypt our message, and we need decryption key to decrypt our message. But if you remember all the crypto system we have seen, once you know your encryption key, we also know the decryption key. Once you know encryption key, you also know decryption key. As well as both the sender and receiver should have the encryption key before communicating to each other. Suppose if I want to communicate with a person, we should have met earlier, or we should have communicated earlier to have a encryption key. And as well as once you know the encryption key, you know the decryption key as well. For example, in a CSS cipher, once you know that 5 is your encryption key, you know -5 is the encryption key. And in the matrix cipher, once you know that A is used to encrypt our message, the decryption message is A inverse. And as well as both the sender and receiver should have met earlier. But these are drawbacks. So in modern communication or any secure internet communication, we are not meeting each other to send our messages. So that's what the public key cryptography comes in. So the public cryptography helps us to send messages without meeting. We don't need to meet each other to send our messages. So they don't. So anyone can send a message to the receiver. So only the internet receiver can decrypt the message. So that's the idea. So in the crypto system we have seen so far, the decryption key is the same as the encryption key, almost. Once you know pi is used for this cipher, minus pi used for the decryption. So are same. So are easily derived from it. So such crypto system are called symmetric key crypto system. Symmetric key means once you know the encryption key, you know the decryption key without any effort or with little effort. So one drawback of symmetric key system is that it requires the prior communication of the key between the Alice and Bob. Suppose Alice and Bob, they want to communicate to each other. So they should have communicated earlier through a secure channel. At least the private key, encryption key and decryption key, they should have communicated to each other before. So, okay. So the idea of public key crypto system is as follows. So the idea of public key crypto system is determined DK. The DK is a decryption key. The determination of the decryption key is computationally infeasible if you know the encryption key EK. So that is the idea of beginning the public key crypto system. So remember, so we have a one key to encrypt our message and we have a one key for the decrypt our message. So in all the crypto system, what we have seen before, once we know the encryption key EK, we almost know the decryption key DK. So in the public key crypto system, the idea is determining the encryption key DK is almost impossible even if you know the encryption key EK. So EK, so most of the time or always EK made public. So EK knows to everyone, the encryption key knows to everyone, and the decryption key DK is only private to us. Okay, so sorry if it is too fundamental. So I thought it's a diverse audience, so it is I thought with starting with the basic thing. Okay, so this picture depicts the idea of a public key crypto system. So we have a plain text and we have a ciphertext. So we have a function from the plain text to the ciphertext, which is easy to compute. So encryption should be easy. So F should be easy to compute, but computing F inverse should be very difficult. So F is known to everyone. F is known to everyone. Public F is a public domain in the public domain. So they can convert any plain text into a ciphertext. But once you have a ciphertext, applying F inverse should be difficult. But F inverse is easy if you know one extra piece of information. So that is the idea. So in all the public key crypto system, this is the basic idea. So we always look for a function F, which is easy to compute. That means which is easy to convert a plain text into a ciphertext. But with the knowledge of F, but it should be computationally very difficult to find the F inverse. However, if you know what one extra piece of information, we call it as a trapdoor information, F inverse should be easier to compute. F inverse difficult to compute without any information, but with one extra piece of information, F inverse should be difficult. So if we find such a function F, it will lead to a one public key crypto system. Okay, let's first address our first difficulty of private key crypto system. So in many private key crypto systems, we want to have our encryption key to be communicated to each other a priori. So both Alice and Bob should have communicated the private key. So without meeting them. So how do we do that? So here is the following. So in this model, we try to understand a process in which both Alice and Bob, they can share a secret key without meeting to each other. Okay, so this is called Diffie-Hellman key exchange. So both Alice and Bob, they want to share a private key or some information. So private key to communicate to encrypt a message or decrypt a message. So what they do, both Alice and Bob, they choose a prime number P, usually very large, and they choose an integer G, which is from 0, any integer from 1 to P minus 1. Any integer G 1 to P minus 1. So that if we consider the set G to the power 0, G to the power 1, G square up to G to the power P minus 2 is same as 1, 2, 3 up to P minus 1. So they make these information as public. So they choose a prime P, or they can communicate by newspaper or whatever, by newsletter or anything. So they choose a larger prime P, and then they choose a integer G from any integer from 1 to P minus 1. But that integer G should satisfy this property. What property? So if we consider the set 1, 2, 3 up to P minus 1, this set should be same as G to the power 0, G1, G square up to G to the power P minus 2. For example, I choose P equal to 5. Usually P should be very large, but for here I choose P equal to 5. And then I choose my A is equal to 2. And then I choose A equal to 2. Sorry, G is equal to 2. So remember, I should choose G so that this set should be same as this set. Let's see whether G satisfies this or not. So my set is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I consider the set G to the power 0, G to the power 1, G square, G cube. So what is G here? My G is 2. So 2 to the power 0, 2, 1, 2 square, 2 cube. And my 2 to the power 0 is 1. So 2, 4, 8. And because I'm working on P is equal to 5, modulo 5. So if you look at the integers, each integers by modulo 5, I have 1, 2 is 2 modulo 5, and 4 is 4 modulo 5, and 8 is 3 modulo 5. So 1, 2, 4, 3, which is same as 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I choose P equal to 5, I can take G is equal to 2. So we can ask the question, how do we know that there is always an integer G between 1 to P minus 1 so that these two sets are same? But there is always an integer G. So it's a deep question in mathematics. So for any prime P, for any large prime we choose P, we can always find an integer G bit from 1 to P minus 1 so that the set 1, 2, 3 up to P minus 1 is same as G to the power 0, G to the power 1, G to the square up to G to the power P minus 1. And in fact, for infinitely many primes P, we can take C, remember, so I have taken G is equal to 2 here. Whether we can take G equal to 2 for infinitely many primes P, if we ask that question, we don't know. So we don't know the answer for this question. It looks so simple, but we don't know the answer for decades. But we certainly know that there is always integer G for any given prime, so that these two sets are same. These two sets are same. But if you ask the question whether 2 will be a integer G for prime P, we don't know. Don't know that. Okay, so that's up information. So what Diffie and Hellman chooses, the Bob and Alice. So Bob and Alice choose a larger prime P and the integer G, and they make it public. So they make it public. So everyone knows the integer G and P. So now what Alice and Bob do? So Alice choose an integer E, a secret integer, which he keeps with himself, and Bob chooses B, which B is secret to B, Bob. So now after choosing integer A, Alice compute G to the power A. So remember, G to the power G is known to everyone, of course Alice as well, and therefore they compute G to the power A modulo P, and Bob compute G to the power B modulo P. So they compute these integers.
So once they computed g to the power a and g to the power b, g to the power allies compute g to the power a, we call it the capital integer a, and b is g to the power b. Once they compute these integers, what they do, allies sends his number to Bob, and Bob sends his integer b to allies. So now a and b, a is known to Bob and b is known to allies. So once allies receives the integer b from Bob, he computes b to the power a. So once Bob receives the integer a, capital A, she computes a to the power b. So now we can see that the integer allies computed b to the power a, and the integer Bob computed a to the power b, they are same integers. Let's see why they are same. So what is b to the power a? B to the power a. What is b? Remember, my b is g to the power b. So my b is g to the power b to the power a. So what is g to the power b to the power a? It is g to the power ba. So this is the integer allies have. And similarly, what Bob has? A to the power b. So what is a to the power b? What is a? G to the power a. So what is g to the power a into g to the power a to the power b? Is again g to the power a. Therefore, the integers they computed finally, they are the same. They are the same. But so they can use that integer, the common integer, as their private key to encrypt their message. So one advantage here in this protocol is they don't need to meet each other to share the secret key, the secret integer. But we can ask the question, because the information P is public, everyone knows, and the integer G is known to everyone. And suppose if somebody interpret their communication, we always assume that A, that is the idea of public key cryptography, and these integers capital A and capital B is known to everyone, and the invader. So the attacker knows capital A and capital B. So remember, so we assume that the attacker knows capital A and capital B. So that is not the secret key they share. They share A to the power B or B to the power A. So in order to know the secret key, the attacker should know either capital A or small a and small b. So remember, so let's write it properly. The attacker knows all these informations. The attacker knows P, what prime they use. The attacker knows G, and we also assume that the attacker knows A and the attacker knows B. So all these information the attacker knows. But he wants to know what is A to the power B or B to the power A. So only that is the information they share. So to know this information, the attacker knows small a and small b from all these information. But anyway, we know that a is g to the power a and b is g to the power b. So that means he asked the question. He should ask the question. So what integer a ally should have used so that when you raise g to the power a, you get capital A? Or the attacker can ask the question, what integers small b Bob should have used so that when we raise g to the power b, we get capital B. So what is that power? What is that power? So if he answers any of these questions, the attacker knows the secret key. But this problem is very difficult. It's called the discrete log problem. So a logarithm is a kind of similar to the logarithm what we study. So it means so we know G and we know capital A. So we only want to know what power we should raise. We should raise G so that we get capital A. That is a logarithm. But it is in a finite set, therefore we call it as a discrete logarithm. But it is a difficult problem, especially if you choose your prime P of bits more than 750 or more than not even for 755, 512. If it is more than 512 bits units, then it is very difficult problem. I'm talking about with large communication, large computational power. So if you choose P is very large, and if you choose your integer G wisely in the sense they are not too slow, they are not too small and too big, and you make them public, then this way of communicating the secret key is not easy for the attacker to find your secret key. So the advantage, as I said earlier, they don't need to meet each other, and they can simply happily communicate the private key, share the private key. Okay, let's see an example for this proper purpose. So let's take a prime P is equal to 941. I always choose smaller primes for our computation because it is not possible to choose bigger primes for examples. But these smaller primes, they are no longer used because they are small. So attacker can easily track this. Okay. So let's say suppose Alice and Bob wants to share a secret key. So they choose a prime P941 and choose an integer G between 1 to 941. I choose 627. And remember, the integer G should be satisfy this property. The set 1, 2, 3 up to 940 should same as G to the power 0, G1, G to the power P minus 2. There are plenty of them. There are plenty of the integer G between 1 to 940 which satisfies this. So that we don't need to worry. So once we make a choice, Alice and Bob make a choice P and G, they make it as public. So they make it as public. So once they make it as public, now they want to share a secret number as their number in the share. So first what they do, Alice choose an integer 347, Bob choose an integer 781. First Alice computes G to the power A, so which is 390 modulo P, which is 941. And Bob computes G to the power B. G is 627, B is 781, so we get 691. So Alice has 390 and Bob has 691. So now, so we send Alice sends A to 392 to Bob. So once Alice sends 390 to Bob, so Bob receives 390 and Bob computes okay, sir. So Alice sends 392 to Bob and Bob sends 691 to Alice. Once they receive their number, they compute. So as Alice receives 691, he raised 691 by A, which is 347. And Bob receives B to the power A, and so which is 470. I mean, so I'm sorry for this. So I am skipping the many computational steps, so it's not difficult to see. So we can see that Alice computes A to the power B and Bob computes B to the power A, and we can see that both these numbers are 470. So now they can easily use 470 as their secret key to encrypt a message. So that is the idea behind the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. The key exchange without meeting each other. So by public, they are making a key exchange in a public domain. They're in the public domain, but for except Alice and Bob, it is difficult for the others to see what is the secret key, the 470. And remember, they know many information. They know 941, they know 627, and they know integer A, 390, 691 also know. They know all this information, but still it is difficult to see what the 470. It is difficult to predict 470 is their secret. So the invader, the Eve should know either small a and small b to attack their key exchange process. Okay. So now we see that we simply the discrete log problem. So which is what, as I said earlier, the Diffie-Hellman key exchange relies on this discrete log problem. So the discrete log problem is one of the difficult problems, computationally difficult problems in mathematics. So we only know sub-exponential time algorithm to solve discrete log problem. The best known algorithm we know so far is sub-exponential. That means it's very difficult. Okay. So what's the discrete log problem? So remember, so discrete log problem is, suppose we know the information h and g modulo p, and we want to see what integer x should be so that g to the power x equal to h modulo p. That means finding an exponent is a discrete log problem. If g, h, and p is given to us, finding an exponent x so that g to the power x is equal to h modulo p is a discrete log problem. So as I said, if p is large, then finding an x for a given g is a difficult problem, and it is a sub-exponential time algorithm. Okay, so the Diffie-Hellman key exchange helps us to share in private key, a common information to each other. Okay, but remember, in a public key crypto system, we want to send messages. We want to send encrypted messages to the receiver. For example, when we in a bank server, so that's a receiver's end. So the public is a sender's end. So anyone can send a message to the receiver, but only the bank server should authenticate whether a proper person used this. They try to communicate or not. So we have our password for our bank transactions. So the bank transaction, we try to send our bank transaction password to the bank, but there is a possibility that the attacker can know what we are sending. So we send our bank password in an encrypted form. Not only we, so many people, the public, everyone sends information to the bank server, but the bank server need to check whether it is exactly the password we created or not. So that is in the checking end. Okay, so in the public key crypto, in the LGML public key crypto system, so it helps us to send a message in a encrypted form. So only the intended recipient, only the intended receiver can decrypt the message. So that's the idea. So there is one end, there is an intended recipient, intended person, and anyone can send a message to the intended person, but only who can. But we can also assume that everyone, the attacker knows what we are sending, but it should be very difficult for the attacker to know what we are sending. But only the intended person can easily decrypt our message and see what we have sent. So that is the thing. So the first public key crypto system we see is a LGML public key crypto system. So the protocol works as follows. So for this, we choose a large prime P. And as well as we choose an integer g from 1 to any integer g from 1 to p minus 1. And as usual, that integer g should satisfy the property, the integer 1 to p minus 1. This set should be same as this set. Should same as this set. So once we make a choice p and g, we make it as public. The publisher publishes p and g. So p and g known to everyone. So p and g known to everyone. Now allies. So remember, so Bob wants to send a message to allies. So Bob is so you can consider allies is a bank server and Bob is a public. So Bob wants to send a message to allies. So before doing that, allies make some arrangements. So what allies that? He chooses a integer a from any integer a from 1 to p minus 1 and computes g to the power a, and compute g to the power a, and he denotes that integer a, g to the power a by capital A. And now he publishes the integer capital A. So capital A known to everyone. That's a public key. That's a public key. So the what information he kept himself is the small integer a. He chooses a small integer a, any integer from 1 to p minus 1, that he keep it himself, and then he computes g to the power a, and he sends that g to the power a integer to public. He make it as public. Okay, now Bob wants to send a message. So everyone can send a message, in particular Bob. So Bob knows the integer capital A. So now what Bob does, Bob wants to send a message m, a plain text m. A plain text can be a sequence of integers, a block of integer, for example, a 6 integers. So he wants to send a message m. She wants to send a message m. So what she does, she choose some random integer k, which has no meaning here. I mean, any integer k will do. So to send a plain text, she choose an integer k. We call it as a random ephemeral tk, and then she computes two integers, c1 and c2. The first integer c1 is g to the power k, and the second integer c2 is m into a to the power k. So remember, g is known to everyone, in particular Bob, and k she chooses. So k she chooses for a moment. Any integer k, any random number will do. So there is no meaning. I mean, there is no restriction for us. We can choose any integer k. So once she make a choice k, she computes g to the power k, and as well as m into a to the power k. So m is a message she was supposed to send, and m into a to the power k. See, she hides m here with a to the power k. Capital A is known to public, therefore she uses capital A, and k she chooses. So he multiply m into a to the power k. And now Bob sends this pair of integers c1 and c2 to Alice. So this c1 and c2 has the message m, like our password, 6-digit password. This c1, c2 has a, but see, my c1 is g to the power k, my c2 is m into a to the power k. But the attacker only knows m into a to the power k, not m into a or g to the power k. So the attacker may not know by looking at c1 and c2 what is m. So Bob sends c1 and c2 to Alice. So once Alice receives the pair of integers c1 and c2, but Alice is the intended recipient, intended person to receive the message. So he has to decrypt the message easily. So how does he do? Because he knows the integer capital small a. No? Small a is a private key, so which he kept himself. That's a private one. So he uses that small piece of information, small a, so that he computes c1 a inverse, multiply with c2, and we can see that if we compute this c1 to the power a inverse into c2, we get m. See, why is that? Why c1 to the power a inverse into c2? What is c1? c1 is g to the power k to the power, sorry, c1 is g to the power k, and then c1 to the power a, and then inverse, and then c2. My c2 is g to the power k. So g to the power k. No. My c2 is m into a to the power k. My a is g to the power a to the power k. Am I right? So my m into a. So this g to the power k to the power a to the power inverse is g to the power minus k, and here I have g to the power a k. So I have m into g to the power minus ka into g to the power ka, which is m into g to the power 0, which is m. So the Alice gets a message here. So it is like boxes. So he wrapped the information m with m into a to the power k, and then he computes g to the power k. So he sends both the information to Alice. So because Alice knows small a, he simply do this calculation, and in the end he gets the plain text here. So for the attacker to know what information they are sharing, so suppose the attacker knows our password. So one way of attacking is to know the integer a. Once the attacker knows the integer a, he can do the similar computation and find the plain text. And remember, so the informations PA, the information P small g are all public, and A also assume that this capital A is known to the public, or at least to the attacker. So in this equation, the attacker knows capital A, the attacker knows the prime P, the attacker knows G. The only information hide from him is small a. That means he has to know what power of G will give capital A. If he knows that information, he can crack our problem. So that is precisely the discrete log problem, right? So the discrete log problem is precisely the discrete log problem, finding an integer, small integer a. So we'll crack our problem. So it is precisely the Elgamal public key process. Okay. So this one, so I explained that Elgamal public key crypto system with an example. So I choose prime 467 and I choose G equal to 2, and the Alice chooses the private key 153, and then he computes G to the power A. So G to the power A is 2 to the power 153, which is 224 modulo 467. So then Alice makes this integer A, which is 224, as a public information. So 224 moves to everyone. And now Bob, we want to send a message. Suppose Bob wants to send his message. What he does, excuse me. So Bob wants to send this message 331. So 331 is the Bob message to Bob's supposed to send to Alice, like a password. So what he does, like in Elgamal, so he chooses a random integer k, 197. There is no meaning here. You can choose any integer k. So and then compute C1, which is G to the power k, which is G is 2, k is 197, G to the power k, which is 87 modulo 467. And then C2, which is the plain text m into G to the m into capital A to the power k, which is 224 to the power 197, which is 57 modulo 467. So he sends both C1 and C2 to Alice. Once Alice receives C1 and C2, he simply computes C1 A inverse into C2. C1 A inverse into C2. That will give our plain text here. So here also, once he receives C1 87 and 57, he only computes C1 A inverse into C2. So that will give the plain text 330. So that is Elgamal public key crypto system. So the Elgamal public, the difficulty or the hardness of the Elgamal public key crypto system is depends on the discrete log problem. So as I said here, the discrete log problem is one of the difficult computational problems in number theory or in general mathematics. This idea motivates us, no? So because it depends on a hard problem. So once you have a hard mathematical problem, you can so there is a possibility of defining a crypto. I should not use that thing. So once you have, so because discrete log problem is a difficult problem, so we have seen many crypto systems which relies on the hardness of the discrete log problem. But there are many other difficult problems in mathematics. There are many. So one among the fundamental difficult problem is a factorization problem. So what is a factorization problem? Suppose you have an integer is given to us. How do the factoring a given integer into product of primes is a classical difficult problems in mathematics. For example, so what's the factorization problem? Suppose I have given two primes P and Q. P is 5 and Q is 7. If we want to find the product P into Q, we know that is 15. So 5 into 3 is 15.
Hello.
But
So I have one doubt, sir.
yeah, please.
Hello.
Yes, please. Please.
Yeah, this is RSA algorithm. Everybody knows actually. How you are relating this with this technology, sir? Blockchain technology. That is actually dealing with the hash function, right? Hash and digital signature.
Yes.
How this will be related to where this will be used, sir? RSA algorithm.
So RSA algorithm. So once we know RSA algorithm, so the digital signature, the RSA digital signature depends on the RSA algorithm.
Okay.
So that
just knowledge of encryption, decryption you are telling, or this directly RSA algorithms used in blockchain?
So come again, please. I mean, what's your question?
Hello.
Yes.
Whether this algorithm is directly used in blockchain technology or just for knowledge you are teaching this? That's my question.
Yeah, of course. So you need a secure communication, right? What secure? The information you share.
Your voice is not clear, sir. Your voice is not clear.
No, we need a secure communication, right? In blockchain technology, we use two type of digital signatures to verify any document.
The signature and hash function. Yesterday they told only these two are used.
Correct.
But we are talking about RSA algorithm, difficult key exchange, all those things. Whether this can be used directly used in the blockchain technology.
Yes. Then
or this knowledge is required. I know that this knowledge is required, encryption, decryption, all those.
Correct.
But whether this RSA algorithm directly used or not, I want to know.
Not sorry. So use directly use RSA algorithm, but you need to know what is RSA.
RSA algorithm for what purpose, sir?
Oh no! As I said earlier, I'm not going to the implementing aspect of that because I don't know any implementing aspect of that too. So as I said earlier, my job is here to introduce the mathematical aspect of that, not the implementing aspect.
Yeah, mathematical aspect where it is applied in a blockchain. So we are attending the blockchain program. Where can you please connect this RSA algorithm where it is used?
Yeah, but I'm not going to do that. My job is I only use the mathematical aspect of it, not the implementing aspect.
Only mathematical aspect.
Yes.
So purpose we have to know now.
Maybe
mathematical aspect.
But maybe in some other session you may get to know that. Not.
There's a question, sir. You just convey to the coordinator, madam. Let her.
Sure.
Clear this later. Okay, please. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so thanks for the question. So let's go back to that problem. So if you have two primes P and P is 5 and Q is 3, and finding the product of P and Q is is relatively easier. But if you know that the integer n is given as 15, and if you want to factor 15 into product of prime, is relatively a difficult problem. So it's not a polynomial time algorithm. So that hardness, so the RSA crypto system, it depends on the hardness of the factorization problem. So the RSA public key crypto system works as follows. So for that, we make some setup. So we choose two primes P and Q, large primes, and we consider the product N is equal to PQ, and we make these information, we make capital N as public. So the capital N makes public information. So remember, Bob wants to send a message to Alice. So what Alice does, so Alice chooses a secret integers small p and small q, primes P and Q, and he makes an exponent. He chooses an exponent E, which is co-prime to P minus 1 and Q minus 1. So GCD of E and P. So he make a choice of E so that E and P minus 1 and Q minus 1 are co-prime to each other, and makes these informations as public, capital N and small e. So the capital N, which is P into Q, and the small e, these two informations are public. So suppose Bob wants to send a plain text message M, she uses the public information small capital N and E to compute M to the power E modulo P. So she has the plain text small m, so she computes M to the power E modulo P. So that M to the power E is her ciphertext. C is a ciphertext. So she sends C to the Alice. So once Alice receives the integer C, and remember, so Alice knows the integer E. So because Alice knows the integer E, and by Euclidean algorithm, so we can find the integer D so that 1 modulo P minus 1 and Q minus 1. So these informations are little tricky because, I mean, this involves some mathematical background, but with simply Euclidean algorithm, what we have defined earlier, we can find the integer D so that E and D are, when you multiply E and D with, we will get 1 modulo P minus 1 and Q minus 1. Or in other words, D is the inverse of E, modulo P minus 1 and Q minus 1. So Alice can easily compute D. So once he computes D, so he raises C to the power D. So we can see that C to the power D is M to the power E. So M to the power E to the power D is MED. So we have MED is, because ED is 1 modulo P minus 1 and Q minus 1, we have we have C to the power D is P minus 1 and Q minus 1. So as I said earlier, so once, I mean, this integer E is known to everyone. So to know D, he has to know P or Q. So once you know what is P minus 1 and Q minus 1, or if he knows either P or Q from capital N, we can find D. So the opponent can easily solve that problem. So this is related to the factorization problem. So once we know capital N, so we want to know what is the prime number P and Q, so that we get PQ is equal to N. Yeah. So this is a RSA algorithm. So as he wants to know the implementing aspect, so I'm skipping some examples. So I move to digital signature scheme. So suppose, I mean, in secure communications, we want to check, the receiver checks whether the information we received from the proper channel or not. So any digital document is signed digitally by a sender. So the receiver has to check that. The receiver has to check that whether it is from the authentic person or not. So there are two type of algorithms we need. One is signing algorithm, one is verification algorithm. So for the signing algorithm, so to sign an algorithm, we use hash functions, because usually the documents are very huge, and we always use hash functions to convert your digital document into smaller value, and we use hash functions for that, and we apply signing algorithm for the hash value. So we need a signing algorithm. So once we use the signing algorithm, we have some output. So that is our sign, say digital sign for our document. And so once we send that digital document and the signing algorithm, the receiver needs to have a verification algorithm. So using the verification algorithm, the receiver verifies with the document along with the sign whether the signature is correct or not. if the signature is correct, the digital signature is correct, then he approves that document. So sorry for the, so I will just explain what is the RSA digital. So in the RSA digital signature scheme, suppose Samantha sends a message to Victor. So what she does, she chooses two secret primes P and Q, the large primes, and then she chooses an integer V, so that V and P minus 1 and Q minus 1 are co-prime. They are co-prime to each other. And then she publishes capital N and V. So this information, capital N and V, this information, capital N and V, they are public information. Now the signing process. So once she computes V, she computes S using including algorithm, so that S into V is 1 modulo P minus 1 into Q minus 1. And by applying a hash function to the digital document, she has a relatively small hash value, and then hash will be called it as capital D. So she computes D to the power S, so that is her sign. So because V is public to everyone, so, and she computes S, because S can't be computable because she knows what is P and what is Q, therefore P minus 1 and Q minus 1 is known to only to Samantha, therefore she can compute S, what is S. So once she knows S, she can compute D to the power S. So that is her sign. So that is her sign to the digital document. So once she finds D to the power S, she sends the digital document D and the signature DS, D to the power S, to Victor. So because once Victor receives the information D and D to the power S, the document D and D to the power S, Victor computes S to the power V. So that means S to the power V, because V is a public information. So V is a public information for Victor. So he can use S to the power V. So we can see that because S is D to the power S, therefore S to the power V is D to the power V to the power S, and Vs is 1 modulo P minus 1 into Q minus 1. And we can see that S to the power V is in fact D modulo P to the power P minus 1 into Q minus 1. So we get the information here. So he can chase whether the information whether the D is what he gets, the S to the power V, whether S to the power V is D or not. Once they are same, he can approve that it is exactly from someone. So for the cryptanalysis point of view, so for the attacker to know that, so so if somebody, if you want to attack this digital signature scheme, we want to know at least one of the primes P and Q. So if we know one of the primes P and Q, we can easily find what is S. Because once we know P and Q, we know what is P minus 1 and Q minus 1. So once we know P minus 1 and Q minus 1, we can find what is S. Therefore, anyone can send a document as Samantha sends. So they can pretend like Samantha. So they can send the same document, or they can change the document. They can find D to the power S once they know S. They pretend like Samantha's document. But knowing either P or Q from capital N is a factorization problem. As I said earlier, factorization problem is classical, and this cannot be attackable in a computational. It is not computationally feasible. And the blockchain technology, so comparatively, the elliptic curve digital signature scheme is widely used in blockchain algorithms. So not the RSA digital signature. So for the time constraint, I'm not going to discuss about elliptic curve digital signature scheme, but the idea is the same. So the idea is mostly generalized to, but So we define group structure for the elliptic curves, and then we define exactly the similar way of protocol for the in elliptic curve digital signatures. So I stop here and show you. Any questions? Sir, actually, I planned only as I said, only the theoretical view. I planned only to discuss the theoretical point of this crypto, especially the mathematical part, or not the implementation part. I mostly work on the theoretical aspect of it, so not in application.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the procedure and application of different algorithms, including Euclidean algorithm and crypto systems and all. Thank you for the valuable session, sir.
So thank you so much, sir. So actually, the cryptography is one of the main concept in blockchain technology. So here the main idea of this session is to give a flavor on how messages are sending more securely between parties. So just give an idea about that, how things are transferred across parties more secure way. And so based on that, we can have some idea on how this SHA algorithm works. That is the main intention of this having this session. So if you have any more doubts, you can ask. Otherwise, we can resume this session by 11:30. So fill the attendance form as well as feedback form. So we can connect again at 11:30 for the next session. Thank you all.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am.